I am still uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable because we are probably still not pushing ourselves hard enough. And I keep coming back to the Energy Horizons logo. And as I said in the morning, it has a dotted line because the horizon you never reach. You only can push it beyond. And if we don't make an attempt to do that, we are going to be in a difficult situation. So I want for the rest of the day, because we have a session today, right now, on the new X factors. After that, we have 2 more solutions factories. And then we have the session with the members of parliament. I want to provoke all of us to ask, what more do we need to do? That while the long term looks great and green, how do we go from here to there? Because every false step between today and tomorrow means day after it becomes harder to achieve. So here's the problem set in my head. I don't come actually from an energy, environment, or water background. I'm a trade economist in my training. So I try to look at this in a slightly different way. What is our problem set? And I fear that India and many other emerging economies, and it was hinted at in the morning as well by Dr. Birol, we have a potential impossible trinity. 1, we want to achieve growth. 2, we want to give decent jobs for all. And 3, we want it to be sustainable. I may be paraphrasing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals into 3. But think about it. A lot of our growth trajectory, a lot of the stories we hear, whether in India, whether in Brazil, you heard from the ambassador, South Africa, Indonesia, China, maybe we are delivering growth and jobs at the cost of sustainability. Maybe we are delivering jobs and sustainability in the rural economy, but it's not scaling up that will deliver growth that big investors would care for. Or maybe we'll have sustainability on the back of deep technological growth, but at the cost of jobs. Now, how do we begin to fix for this impossible or potential impossible trinity? Guess what? I'm not going to give you the answer. But that is the homework in front of us. But I'll make some propositions. And I think at least for India, if we take these 3 points as at least as part of the objective function, there are also, I believe, 3 areas where we could potentially try and move further along all 3 points. The first is the inclusion of the rural economy in our growth paradigm. And we hear about this in terms of rural distress. We hear about this in terms of farmers' distress. We hear about this in terms of water stress. And we always have palliative solutions, usually when we are approaching elections. Let's flip that narrative around. Can the rural economy, structured differently, deliver jobs, growth, and sustainability? Maybe it can, maybe it can't. But we are not even looking hard enough. Last year, CEW's researchers from its energy access team found that in the farm sector and in the non-farm sector, using distributed renewables can power up the productive side of the rural economy with a market size of approximately $53 billion. That's not small on any metric. And yet we think of the rural economy as small scale, not big deals, very hard to do transactions, so palliative solutions. We heard about solar irrigation. India has deployed more solar irrigation than any other country in the world. Now, is solar irrigation a mitigation solution? Is it an adaptation solution? Is this a new business model? Is it an investment opportunity for Indian companies to invest in other emerging markets? This photograph is of a farmer from Andhra Pradesh who practices natural farming. You might have heard from the finance minister just last week about the central government's intention to scale up what is happening in Andhra Pradesh. But what will it take to make the marginal farmer get access to credit, adopt new sustainable practices, but also, guess what, have access to market, so that high yields convert to high incomes. But without including the rural economy in this growth paradigm of growth, jobs, and sustainability, we will just not start pushing the horizon further. The second area where we need to tap in, and I know this panel will, the next panel will talk about it a little bit more in detail, is what I call sustainable urbanization. Today's urban population in India is the world's third largest country by population. And yet we don't have cities in our frame of reference, because we think of our cities as dysfunctional, as misgoverned, as chaotic, as unplanned. But what could be new growth drivers? Are we using all our roofs? We heard from Secretary Kumar that land is a problem. Well, why should land be a problem if we have our roofs? But that doesn't mean our roofs can only be used for solar panels. It might be used for urban farming. It might be used to sun yourself or, get wet in the rain. CEW's research is doing consumer surveys to understand what kind of users we'll put our roofs to. But it also requires business models, about which you've heard over the last 2 days. It requires financial solutions. It requires a consumer-centric approach. But that's not the only growth driver in a sustainable urbanization paradigm. If we are a country on the move, how fast will we move is one question. Why do we move is another question. What kind of urban design will make us move less and do more? And then we structure our mobility solutions, whether it's public or it's private, to then hook up, maybe with rooftop producers of energy, to power up electric vehicles, to create new business lines, new business models, and jobs. As we heard yesterday, 7 times more jobs can be created from rooftop renewables than from utility scale. This picture is from 12 years ago, 2007. I was living in London at the time. And that photograph is my wife and my father-in-law. But that's not the important point. We were taking a walk after dinner, and we came across this car. It's quite cute. There's names of London neighborhoods on it. So we stopped by to take a photograph. But I think many of you can recognize actually why we stopped by to take a photograph. It's an Indian car. It's the Reva. 12 years ago, an Indian startup was manufacturing an electric vehicle that met European safety standards to be able to be exported there. 12 years ago, did anyone talk about China's electric vehicle industry? No, because it didn't exist. Where did we lose out? So when we think of sustainable urbanization and new X factors for growth, we again have to tie in what kind of mobility, what kind of industrial policy, what kind of new business models on our roofs can create jobs, growth, and sustainability. That brings me to the last driver of growth, potentially. Resource efficiency, green industrialization. Sounds glib, sounds cute. We are not going to get there unless we recognize what makes us uncompetitive. Of course, again, we can blame labor laws, land acquisition, ease of doing business, etc., etc., etc. You can go to any business conference in Delhi and you'll hear the same things. But guess what? Indian industry faces some of the highest energy costs in the world. The share of energy in our input costs is perhaps 3 times on average than the share of energy in the input costs of a German industry. How do we get competitive, even if I gave all the land, removed all the labor laws, give all the environmental clearances? How do we get competitive without becoming resource efficient? So can we make steel with solar panels? Yes? How many no's, how many yeses? We can? Well, all the engineers who've been working on this know, yes, potentially we can. Not by sticking a solar panel on the roof of a steel plant, but can we use renewable energy to split water and use hydrogen as a substitute for coal? This is not feel-good, tree-hugging industrialization. Steel is the bedrock of any major economy and will remain the bedrock of an emerging economy like India. So we cannot just say, let's electrify and use renewable energy for our hotels. We have to grow our industry in a greener, sustainable way. But this is difficult because the work that CEW and IEA have done, the capital cost for green steel is 3 times more. OPEX is about the same compared to a blast furnace steel plant. So what financial models, what kind of public sector investment, R&D, de-risking will help us reduce that delta in the capital cost? Then can we create new growth, new jobs, but also deliver on sustainability? So as I said, I really stepped up here without planning to make a presentation. I'm sure you would have been provoked a lot more and enjoyed Mr. Kant if he were here. But I used this opportunity to just nudge us a little bit more. That while we are smiling, and there are a lot of interesting sessions and interesting discussions, what more can we do to solve for that potential impossible trinity and find new X factors for growth, jobs, and sustainability? Thank you.